Welcome to the 6-Minute Stretch, challenge number 13. Sarah and I are both back for this one as we continue exploring the concept of hardiness further as a tool to increase your bounce back factor. Today, we're going to talk about the second C of hardiness, which is control. As I can see Sarah, what's that, Sarah? Oh, Sarah wants to take control. She said she's been fine without me the last 2 sessions, so she wants complete control here. So Sarah, as you wish, I'm going to give you control right now.
I will take it. I will always take it. So yes, as you mentioned, we're going to look at hardiness. This is kind of our part 3 of hardiness where we're looking at control. And one of the things I want to quickly remind them of is that, hey, last time we were together, we talked about how hardiness has 3 components. And if you look at these 3 components of hardiness, we have challenge, we also have the hardiness factor of control, and we have the hardiness factor of commitment. And our last 6-minute stretch, we talked about challenge, but this time we're going to dig into that middle one where we look more about control. And as always, Denny and I always like to start with, what is the definition? How do you define the concept of control? So when we look at control, we want to make sure that we realize what this is really measuring is your internal focus on what you can control, or a belief that you can influence the course of your life, both personally and professionally. When you think about this concept of control, what we know is that hardy individuals who are hiring control don't typically become overwhelmed. They don't usually feel helpless because they strive to gain control by taking action. They know they can't control everything, and that's a big deal. So when we get higher in this element, we know we can't control everything, but we choose to take the ones that we can, in fact, influence. And so what we want to do is really give ourselves exploration here. And I'll start with a quick quote as you're exploring your level of hardiness. Author Irene Casorla once said that the pen that writes your life story must be held in your own hand. And I love that mantra around control. So let's give you the pen today by figuring out where is your level of control. And so if you look at the different descriptors, you can find that control can either show up in a low frequency of usage, you can kind of be moderate or mid, or you can be high. And when you look at these, let's just take a quick peek at the descriptors. When we are in what we call low control mode, we're typically going to believe there's not much we can do to influence a moment. We may be fearful about things that we can't see or predict, and we might feel powerless. If you've ever said to yourself, well, there's nothing I can do, you were in a low control moment, which we've all had. Now, if you move to that mid-control level, you're really someone who feels like you usually have something you can do, a resource that can apply influence to a moment. You're likely someone who's willing to work pretty hard for it, but generally you're somebody who can turn your attention to what you can do to gain control. And I say generally, because I will say when we're in that moderate zone, it means sometimes we can do it, but there are also times where we're not quite getting there. So you're kind of in that middle zone. Now, when you reach that high control level, this is where you have deeply rooted beliefs that you can influence a moment, that you really choose to accept the responsibility for driving yourself to those outcomes that you want, and you believe that you can really mold your environment around those desired goals. When you look at these descriptors, you should be able to say which one of these is currently most consistently describing me. And if you know you would like to dial up your hardiness factor of control, we would like to share with you some strategies that might be useful. So Denny, give them some tips.
Thanks, Sarah. And as I think about this low control, I think when that happens, and I know it happens to me quite often at times where I have to really take a step back and say, do I really not have any control here? Because in my mind, that just becomes, I'm a victim. And we have to really challenge ourselves. And as we think about this, I think it's very difficult to be hardy or resilient if you don't feel like you have control over things. So as Sarah said, what are some of those strategies? Well, one of the strategies that we think is extremely important is to expand your mental energy and use it wisely. Don't allow yourself to dwell on negative problems. And when that happens, it's very hard to bounce back. And this is all about being able to bounce back and do that quickly. Secondly, is develop coping mechanisms. What are some of those coping mechanisms that you currently have in place, or ones that you can build? And it goes back to how we deal with stress. One of the things you can do is just to pause in a moment and count down from 100 by threes. I'm not sure why we have that in there, because I know I can't. I can't even count to 100 by threes.
It's a good one.
But it's something to think about is, what can I do to calm things down and look at things from a more real perspective? The other thing, which we've heard before, is to break our task down to manageable chunks. When we look at a problem or an issue and it's this big, it becomes overwhelming. But if we can start shrinking it down to little steps, things that we can have bite-sized information, it becomes that much easier for us. And then The other thing is to find your trends and triggers. What's creating the anxiety for you? And if you've seen us or listened to us in some of these other 6-minute stretches, you know that has to do with impulse control. And so impulse control is what's going on in the moment that causes these triggers. Because if I can figure those out, or you can figure those out, you can pause and sit back and say, is this anxiety real? Or am I creating some of it? And of course, we need to have healthy boundaries. And those boundaries are how we spend our time. Are we allowing everybody to take over our calendar? We need to be able to say no. And we need to recognize that we do have some of that control. And that's one of the things that we hear so often from people, whether it's a staff level person, somebody in mid-level, or even the C-suite folks, is how do I say no to people? So in addition to the healthy boundaries, we need to get up and get moving. And so we want to release endorphins. And the way we do that is to get up and to be physically active. And we can release those endorphins just by walking around the house. We can release them by running or riding a bike or something, but we want to get up and get moving. And if you might remember, as part of this is one of the bounce back factors is to be physically charged. How much energy do we have? How physically charged are we? So as we look at this, as we always do at the conclusion of a 6-minute stretch, start by doing a self-assessment of your existing levels of control. Where are you? Be very honest and realistic with yourself. And of course, after you do this, share it with your team. How can you help them feel like they have more control over situations? So this is our challenge with lucky number 13. It's go time. So let's do this.